Ethan was a 24-year-old university student who grew up with nothing but dreams and struggle. His father had passed away when he was a child, and his mother worked 2 jobs just to keep him in school. Life hadn't been kind, yet Ethan refused to give up. He studied hard, helped his mother, and often went to bed hungry because every penny mattered. Still, he dreamed of one thing: to give his mother a life without pain or poverty. One evening, while serving at a fancy restaurant where he worked part-time, Ethan noticed an elegant older woman sitting alone by the window. She had silver hair perfectly styled, a pearl necklace, and eyes that carried stories of a long, lonely life. Her name was Margaret Beaumont, a 71-year-old widow who once owned several luxury hotels across the country. Though she was surrounded by wealth, she was terribly alone. Her only son had passed away years ago, and her relatives only visited her when they needed money. That night, Margaret noticed how Ethan treated her differently, not as a rich woman, but as a human being. He smiled gently, helped her with the menu, and even walked her out when it started to rain. She looked at him as if she hadn't seen genuine kindness in years. "You remind me of my son," she said softly before leaving a generous tip and disappearing into the night. Days passed, and Ethan thought he'd never see her again. But one afternoon, as he was heading to his next class, a black car stopped beside him. The window rolled down, and there she was. "Margaret." "Ethan," she said kindly, "I need someone to accompany me for a few weeks. Someone honest." "I'll pay you well." Ethan hesitated, unsure why a millionaire woman would choose him. But he needed the money to pay his tuition and his mother's medical bills, so he agreed. From that day, Ethan became Margaret's personal assistant, driving her to appointments, reading to her in the evenings, and sometimes just sitting quietly as she talked about her past. Despite their age difference, a strange friendship grew between them. She began to trust him deeply, and Ethan, who had known only hardship, began to see in her the kind of warmth he had lost since his father's death. But gossip soon followed. Her relatives accused Ethan of using her. "He's after your money, Aunt Margaret," they said cruelly. But she ignored them. In fact, one evening, as they sat in her garden watching the sunset, she looked at him and said something that would change both their lives. "Ethan," she whispered, "would you marry me?" He was stunned. "Marry you? But a broken bar, why me?" Margaret smiled sadly. "Because you're the only one who's been honest with me, and I don't have much time left. I don't need romance or a broken bar, I need peace, and I want to spend whatever days I have left beside someone who reminds me that goodness still exists." Ethan couldn't answer right away. The idea sounded insane. A 24-year-old marrying a 71-year-old woman? Society would laugh at him. But when he looked at her frail hands and her trembling smile, he remembered all the nights his mother cried because they couldn't afford her medicine. And for once, he thought maybe life was giving him a chance to do something right, something kind. A week later, they married quietly at a small chapel. There was no crowd, no glamour, just Ethan, Margaret, and a few witnesses. His mother cried once she saw the photos, not because she understood, but because she saw peace on her son's face for the first time in years. For 7 days, everything seemed calm. Ethan took care of her like family, made her laugh, cooked her meals, and read to her every night. But on the 7th day, broken bar, everything changed. That morning, Ethan woke up to find Margaret gone. Her room was empty, her bed untouched. Panic flooded his chest until the butler handed him an envelope sealed with her initials. "She left this for you, sir," the butler said quietly. Ethan tore it open, and his hands trembled as he read the letter. "Greater than my dear Ethan, by the time you read this, I will already be gone. The doctors told me months ago that my heart was failing. I didn't tell you because I didn't want your pity. These past weeks were the happiest of my life. You gave me laughter when I'd forgotten what it felt like to smile. You reminded me of the son I lost, kind, humble, and full of life. I didn't marry you out of loneliness or broken bar. I married you because I wanted you to have the future you deserve. Everything I own now belongs to you. But remember this, Ethan, wealth means nothing without kindness. Use it wisely. Help others the way you helped me. Thank you for being the light in my final days. Love, Margaret." Ethan fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. She hadn't just given him her fortune, a broken bar, she had given him purpose. In her will, she had left him everything: her estates, her hotels, and enough money to secure his and his mother's future forever. But Ethan didn't waste her gift. Instead of living a life of luxury, he created a foundation in her name at the Margaret Beaumont Hope Trust to help poor students, widows, and the elderly. He built free schools, donated scholarships, and spent his life teaching others that compassion is the real treasure. Years later, as he stood before a crowd of graduates, now a respected philanthropist, he looked up at the sky and smiled. "You changed my life, Margaret," he whispered. "I hope I made you proud."